Happy Valentine's Day. We love that you're taking 10 for today's show, and we hope everything is going well with you. I'm Carl Azuz. A lot of eyes worldwide are fixed on what's happening in China and Ukraine, and we're covering new events from both places today. As far as things go in Eastern Europe, Russian military forces around Ukraine could invade the country by the end of this week. That's the word from the White House. The United States is the biggest contributor to NATO, an alliance of North American and European countries, and they don't want Russia to try to take over Ukraine, which is on Russia's western border. Russia doesn't want Ukraine to become a member of NATO. It would consider that a threat too close to home. During disagreements over this issue and others, Russia has built up a huge military force around Ukraine, and NATO has threatened to heavily penalize Russia's economy if it tries to invade Ukraine. On Saturday, U.S. President Joe Biden discussed this in a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. On Sunday, President Biden discussed it in a phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. American officials say the hope and the priority is to resolve the problem diplomatically so that Russia does not invade Ukraine. But even though Russia has repeatedly said it's not planning to, it blames Western countries in their media for spreading false information about that. It also says NATO has failed to address Russia's main security concerns. So what action the country is planning to take is anyone's guess. Over the weekend, the U.S. moved some of its troops out of Ukraine. America does not plan to involve them directly in a war with Russia, and the U.S. evacuated most of its embassy staff as well. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said he doesn't think a Russian attack is going to happen anytime soon. But if and when it does, the timing of all things could depend on the weather.
Across much of Ukraine, it's been a mild winter. Still plenty of snow, but much of it turning to slush. The Sea of Azov, less icy than normal for the beginning of February. According to the latest data, temperatures are running between 1 and 3 degrees Celsius higher than the 30-year average. And that just might make a difference to any Russian military offensive.
For him to move in and occupy the whole country, particularly from the north, from Belarus, he's going to have to wait a little bit till the ground's frozen.
The view in Washington is that a Russian offensive needs frozen ground, given Ukraine's landscape.
Prominent terrain includes flat, open plains, and there are abundance of rivers and lakes, and there's a high water table. And when that high water table freezes, it makes it for optimal conditions for cross-country tracked and wheeled vehicle maneuver.
It's not so much that modern tanks get bogged down in wet conditions, but the support they need can do.
More importantly than the tracked vehicles themselves is what they need to sustain themselves, which is fuel and ammunition, which are very heavy and are generally carried by wheeled vehicles that need good roads.
Even the Russians admit that in some areas, wet conditions can be a factor.
If you studied geography of the area, actually the southern part of Belarus, close to the Ukrainian border, is a very swampy area which is hardly fitting for certain active engagement of tanks and other heavy weaponry.
It's not just the conditions on the ground, it's the skies as well. Clear skies are important for reconnaissance and intelligence gathering and for landing assault troops.
Cloudy weather, rain, snow, all of that would inhibit the reconnaissance measures that you would use to find the targets. And if you can't find the targets precisely, then the effect that your fires are going to have are going to be diminished.
But in the initial phase of any conflict, some experts say that Russia would likely opt for weapons that can operate in any weather, long-range artillery, ballistic missiles. They would seek to take out Ukrainian command and control, not frontline forces. Satellite imagery indicates that such weapons have been brought forward to positions near the Ukrainian border.
10-second trivia. What was featured for the first time at the 1900 Summer Olympics? A marathon, women's events, cycling, or an Asian host city? 4 years after the first modern Olympics in 1896, women were allowed to compete for the first time. 122 years later, female competitors are still making Olympic history. Norway's Marta Olsbu Roysland became the first woman to win 4 biathlon medals at a single Olympics. U.S. snowboarder Chloe Kim became the first woman to win back-to-back golds in the halfpipe. U.S. skater Erin Jackson became the first black American woman to win an Olympic speed skating medal. It was gold. And at age 35, snowboarder Lindsey Jacobellis became the oldest American woman to win gold, and she won 2. But a number of other women and men who qualified and made it to Beijing have been unable to compete or even train. China's strict COVID containment laws have kept them in isolation.
From Olympic dream to quarantine, the nightmare scenario. Athletes who test positive, like Norwegian Olympian Jarl Magnus Rieber, whisked out of the Olympic Village in an ambulance into this dystopian reality. Workers in hazmat suits carry his Olympic luggage into the isolation facility. The overwhelming smell of disinfectant. They go through paperwork, take his vitals. Feeling healthy, but making it out in time to compete, he tells me, is a slim possibility. The gold medalist in the Nordic combined skiing event trapped in this room for more than a week, running back and forth over and over again just to stay in shape. His happiest day here, getting his bike delivered, the confinement ruining years of preparation.
Now hope for a miracle. Yeah, it destroys a lot because you have tuned your shape so much into this event.
But for it to end, athletes have to deliver 2 negative PCR tests with at least 24 hours in between. Then after that, 7 more days of isolation at the Olympic Village. For some athletes, it's already too late. American ice skating star Vincent Zhou telling fans he's out of the games because of COVID, even though he's taken every precaution possible. In a heart-wrenching video, he shares what he would tell his younger self.
Just the pain of it all is pretty insane.
More than 400 Olympic personnel have tested positive for COVID, and athletes tell me that isolation hotels like that one are getting full, but they couldn't feel more isolated or anxious, knowing that their Olympic dreams could end in there. American bobsledder Josh Williamson stuck in California after testing positive.
I had kind of done everything I can, and that's one of those things where it's a hard pill to swallow when it's something that might be out of your control.
Swedish curler Sofia Manbergs documents her roller coaster week for CNN.
I can finally start packing my stuff again. I'm like all emotional right now.
After agonizing days of positive tests, she finally recovered, making her way to the games.
Like, get the Olympic experience started.
For these Olympics, even the little things like embracing friends is a victory.
Me too. Hug my friends and best teammates ever.
Selena Wang, CNN, Beijing.
52 world records in 52 weeks. That was the goal that David Rush set for himself last year. He's a dude who's made a career out of breaking world records and using the publicity to promote STEM education. So let's get educated on some of his feats. Putting on t-shirts, setting up chessboard with one hand, catching grapes in mouth while juggling, balancing toilet rolls on head, catching ping pong balls and shaving foam. Whatever this is, fastest time for wrapping a person in cling wrap. It benefits David that Guinness publishes a wide array of records. The company told NPR News it's officially recognized 43 of his 52 attempts, with the others under review, but Guinness says it wants him to break 53 this year. That's a lot to juggle, especially with some still up in the air. But if your job is making records by breaking records, I guess setting records is where you begin. And no one who does this weekly is doing so weekly. Recording records requires record-setting strength. I'm Carl Azuz for CNN 10. Today's shoutout takes us to Harlowton, Montana, where we're happy to see the students of Harlowton High School. Thank you for engineering a request on our YouTube channel.